welcome to the Ken Show Way. I am your host, Roger Rugi, and today I am really excited because I have Patrick McCowan back for the second time. And the reason is he's got a new book out. Now, if you haven't heard of Patrick and some of his work, I'm going to encourage you to get The Oxygen Advantage and what I personally consider is the Bible of all breathing, the final stop on that one, The Breathing Cure. And the reason I say that is Patrick has done such a good job of taking his 2 decades plus of deep dive into everything breath, and he's got it all there for you in the book. And as you know, the Ken Show Way is all about discovering the grandest potential that we have as human beings, about building really powerful resilience. And that's exactly what Patrick's work is about. Now, he's got a new book out that I got lucky and had him gift me an early version of it so that I could read it before everybody else. And I love that. And it's called Atomic Focus. And this book is very different from Patrick's work in the sense that he's really boiled down a lot of the concepts into a very easy read, but a way that also allows us access to some of his best techniques. The kind of low-hanging fruit is how I'd like to think of it, and it's filled with great illustrations. I just found it to be one of the go-to books I want on my shelf all the time. And so, Patrick, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure, Roger. A lot has happened since the last time we were on, so no better time for breathing to take place.
Oh my goodness, 100%. And the first thing I want to ask you today, Patrick, is why this book? Why Atomic Focus? Why now?
Oh, it's because I think it's totally overlooked. I have a personal agenda with this because I left school at 14 years of age, never to go back. And I told nobody really about it. I've never made it public. I put it into Atomic Focus for the first time. You'll see it written in the back of the book. And people might ask, well, what sort of parents did I have that I left school so early? I was headstrong. I am a headstrong individual. I can be stubborn. It's a family trait that we have. And maybe this has given me the impetus to be able to teach breathing for 20 years, because sometimes it was a bumpy road because it wasn't a normal career path. Now, thankfully, it's been absolutely wonderful and it's been tremendous. But I left school at 14 because I was falling asleep in class. And as a young kid, I had great difficulty in sitting in a classroom environment from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock, holding my attention on what the teacher. I had absolutely no interest in it. And I had no interest because I just didn't have any concentration or attention span. Now, I didn't know back then that I'd sleep disorder breathing. And lo and behold, I left school for good. And life can often direct you in certain ways. I went back to school a year later. And I started hanging around with a different group of kids. And these were kids that were coming from a background of university. And that was their kind of, motive. And it's amazing how your peers can also help to influence your decisions. I went and I really put attention on what I was doing, but I worked damn hard. Like, I studied 10 hours a day, just even to get the exams in high school, to get into university. And I studied pretty hard in university, even though I partied a bit, but I also studied. And it could have been a lot easier because, I was the kid that was looking at a page. But even though my eyes were looking at the page, my attention wasn't on the page. And if you think of it, education, we spent 16 years, or most of us, 16 years in formal education. And formal education is designed to sharpen the mind, that we are able to reason and analyze and question, that we are more intelligent. And despite this, formal education does not teach us how to concentrate, and it does not teach us how to improve our attention span. But yet, to excel academically, you need to be able to concentrate and you need to have a decent attention span. Now, what is concentration? Well, it's pretty simple. It's your ability to hold your attention on one thing. That's what it is. How long can you hold your attention on that one thing for? If you've got poor concentration, your mind is all over the place. or you may be stuck in your head. So you're not able to direct your attention to where you're directing it upon. And your attention span is the length of time that you're going to hold your attention on that one thing. Now, these two traits are something that we all need, whether it's the school kid, the university student, the corporate worker, first responder, police, military, sports, it doesn't matter. We need these two traits, but nobody is teaching us how. That's what atomic focus is. And I have another modus operandi here, because when the mind is racing and when the mind is befit with anxiety and high stress levels, concentration is significantly reduced. So there's an inverse relationship between high stress and concentration, because when we're stuck in that space of high stress and our breathing is fast, our heart rate's going to be that bit elevated, the brain is interpreting that the body is under threat, and all the brain wants to do is to get you the hell out of the situation. We can't hold our attention, we can't plan, we can't have rational thought. If I was to write a book though on high stress, many people won't want to buy it, because many people will feel that, well, stress is good, and we all need stress. Stress is part of the way of life. I didn't want to write this book on anxiety. I'd already written one back anyway 11 years ago. I said I want to write a book on using the same tools that you would use to build up resilience and to deal with stress are the same tools that you use to build your concentration and your attention span. If you can improve somebody's concentration and attention span, you will naturally make them more resilient. Because as the mind becomes quieter and as you can direct your attention to where you want to direct it upon, you're naturally able to control your mind, and you're more, say, aware then of tricky situations that it has. And it comes down to physiology. Before anybody starts thinking this is a book on mindfulness, I have to tell you, it's not. Straight off, it's not a book on yoga. It's not a book on woo-woo. I've cut out nonsense out of it altogether, and I wanted to have it straight down to the point. I'll tell you a story. I was working with a group of elite snipers for a national police force, and I was brought in to work on breathing while pulling the trigger of a gun. And again, this is very interesting, because really when we think of the breath, it's all about changing states. Now, I can imagine if you had an elite, now these guys are highly trained, they're young guys, they're typically in their 30s, they're doing an hour or 2 hours of physical exercise every day. And when an operation comes, they have to sit behind the sight of a rifle in shifts of 1 hour. Now, I have to say, Roger, that is absolute. To be able to hold your attention for 1 hour. And that individual cannot waver from that, because that the time that their mind goes off on a tangent or goes off on a train of thought, that may be when a situation unfolds. So they have to have their attention. How do you train your brain for that? That training doesn't happen when you're behind the sight of the rifle. Of course, you train behind the sight of the rifle, but it's your everyday practice that's the key there. And the first thing that I would say is that sleep quality is absolutely vital, because if we're waking up lousy, we're not going to have the ability to change states. And for me, it was my poor sleep quality that was impacting my concentration. The second thing is functional breathing patterns. If, for example, and this can be influenced by our genetics, but also the environment that we're in, it's a natural response that when we're in a difficult situation, it's a natural response to the human body. We start breathing harder and we start breathing faster. And we have to ask the question, how is the brain interpreting your breathing? So coming back to the snipers, so we're putting it together, and I reached out to a couple of guys as well. I reached out to Scott McGee, for example. And I know you know Scott, and I asked him his take, and Joey Williams as well. I asked him his take, and then when I was working, I was saying, okay, well, when would you pull the trigger? When you synchronize the breath to the trigger, do you breathe in? Do you pull the trigger on the breath in, or do you breathe in and hold your breath and then pull the trigger? Or do you breathe in and have a relaxed and slow, gentle breath out and pull the trigger on the slow breath out, or do you breathe out and pull the trigger? And then I was thinking about, well, what is the breath here? During the breath in, it's when the vagus nerve it steps back. So basically, the breath in is when the foot is taken off the brake. So it's more kind of a sympathetic or stress response of the breath. Our heart rate is slightly faster during the inhalation. And during the breath out is when the foot is put to the brake. And as the foot is put to the brake, the heart rate starts to slow down. And the time to pull the trigger is in between the heartbeats, because even the heartbeat can throw off target. And so then the question is, well, how can we change states sufficiently to lengthen the gap, the time heartbeat to heartbeat? And this comes back to our everyday breathing, but it also comes back to the individual's ability to hold their attention on what they are doing to direct attention. Now, it's a simple example, and nobody would ever think that breathing is going to be brought into elite snipers, and I had the luxury of getting in behind the sight of the rifle and putting it into practice myself. And you're having that soft breath in through your nose, and you're having the relaxed and a slow and a gentle exhalation. And it's almost that you're breathing into the shot with that really slow, relaxed exhalation towards the bottom of the exhalation. But if you find that you're off focus a little bit, you don't pull the trigger, you wait for the next breath. You take a very soft breath in and a really relaxed. And this is, I think this is coming back to ancient wisdom. I was reading a book then, The Zen of Archery, and you're thinking about warriors of old and Japanese warriors, that the bow and the arrow and the archer become one, that there's no differentiation. It's almost like you are merging seamlessly, that the piece of equipment in your hand is part of you. And also time, you are immersed completely in the present moment with your full attention directed, and this is flow state. Now, many people talk about flow state, and when I was writing Atomic Focus, I wanted to say, like, can we achieve flow states? Can we achieve self-actualization if we have poor sleep and if we have poor breathing? And Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which many people will be aware of, that motivational pyramid that was written back in the day. We as human beings, we need food and we need clothing, we need shelter. Nowadays, we are fortunate enough, most of us, that we have food, we have clothing, we have shelter. But what we don't have is, we don't have deep sleep, because sleep disorder breathing is affecting about 40% of the male population. We don't have functional breathing. 75% of people with anxiety have dysfunctional breathing. 30% of people with asthma, for example, 50% of people with lower back pain. And people talk about mindfulness as a means of directing your attention, but how can we be mindful if we're feeling lousy and if our physiology is in that state of fight or flight? So Atomic Focus was simply, this is a book about changing states. That's all. And the one thing about this is that the tools that you use, if somebody is using this as part of their occupation, because again, I went then from school into university and into the corporate world, and I absolutely hated it. I hated the pressure put on people, and I hated myself having to put pressure on other people down below. And when I look back, it wasn't necessarily the corporation that was the problem. I just didn't have the resilience to deal with a tricky situation. I was in that constant fight or flight. And you know what? I suppose you don't know what you don't know. That's the way it is. And there was an example I put into the book of Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. He's a well-known doctor in the United Kingdom. And he was interviewing a brain surgeon, Dr. Rahul. And you can imagine now, that's a pretty stressful job. You can imagine somebody lying in front of you, they're on the table, and you've cut into their skull, and you're peering into the brain. And even though, of course, these guys are highly trained, they're human beings at the end of the day. And Dr. Rahul said, he says, when I get into a tricky situation, the first thing I do is prevent myself from hyperventilating. And I was just listening to this and said, of course this doctor knows this, but why doesn't everybody else know about it? Why doesn't the school kid and the university student know about it? The corporate worker, why doesn't the first responder know about it? Because when you get into that state of hyperventilation, you're in a difficult situation, you respond by harder and faster breathing. The body and mind is in a state of fight or flight, and we're very liable to make mistakes because this is not a time for focus. This is a time where the brain is telling the body, get the hell out of this situation as quick as you can. So, it's simple stuff. And again, it would come back to deep sleep and functional breathing. And also for people to forget about take this full big breath, because what actually happens when you take this full big breath, you're getting rid of too much carbon dioxide, your blood vessels constrict, and there's reduced oxygen and blood flow going to the brain. Instead, we need to be doing light, slow, and deep breathing. And of course, then there's other breathing exercises to bring a balance and change states, exercises to stress the body and mind, but also exercises to recover. And oftentimes it's the recovery which is even more important.
Patrick, that was an awesome summation, and it's fantastic. And by the way, I love doing LSD, light, slow, deep breathing.
Yes.
So we've um,
You,
we've got a
you need
bit
to you need to clarify that one, Roger.
exactly. Let's all do some LSD, friends. I actually just did a short video on that on YouTube just because I thought it was a fun play on words, and let's have some fun while we're doing it. A ton to unpack there, Patrick, and I can really relate to the education piece myself. I wish that I had had someone to have taught me this along my own academic journey, because like you, I really struggled in school until I got into the college arena, and then just by sheer willpower I was putting out the energy to try to survive it. And of course, at the end of the day, you're exhausted, beat up, not restored, right? So I'm burning money out of my resilience bank account like crazy, but I'm not putting it back in. And this is what I love. One of the things that really struck me about everything you were unpacking there was how in modern times we're really in this low to moderate level of fight or flight stimulation all the time. And it has become chronic, and we're seeing the breakdown of that, right? And people are always looking for the next supplement or the next exercise and things like this. And all of that plays a part. But what we seem to always miss is the power of the breath and how quickly it can reset. Now, friends, I've been doing Patrick's work now for several years, and this is a daily practice. There isn't a single day that goes by that I am not using these techniques. And I'm going to give you an example of how I'm using it right now. So I'm traveling a bit and I'm driving, and I'm doing, several hundred miles a day. And there are points where the head wants to get on a swivel. Woo, I am tired. I immediately begin the breathing process. What I find fascinating is not only do I have my narrow focus expand and broaden, so I'm taking in more, right? I'm more focused. You can get very myopic and just locked into something, or you can expand it and be fully present, is how I'd like to say it. And this is what's really happened in our society. We're distracted to the point where we can't get anything done. This thing's beeping and your computer's doing that, and there's something on the television and people are walking by and, hey, Roger, can you? Whoa, whoa. Imagine taking a time out and using the breath to recenter yourself so that you're peacefully focused, more aware of your surroundings. If you're in the first responder community, that could mean life or death, right? So when we think about the distractions that are happening in today's world, right, constantly around us, how does the breath help us in that regard? Because I think that is the number one thing that most people are really struggling with, is to just become present.
It's the one constant. It's always there. And you can tap into it in any situation. And all it takes is about 90 seconds to get the benefits from it. You know, again, coming back to the breath that we spoke about earlier on, during the inhalation, it's more of a stress response. The vagus nerve is stepping back, and during the exhalation, it's more under the control of the body's relaxation response. But also by controlling the exhalation, whenever we have a slow and relaxed exhalation, we're telling the brain that everything is okay. So, say for example, you are in a tricky situation, just as that doctor is, he is a tricky situation. And he says the first thing I do is prevent myself from hyperventilation. Well, what is hyperventilating? Hyperventilation means that your respiratory rate, so that the number of breaths per minute that you're breathing, gets faster. So your breathing starts to become faster. Your breathing also can become more shallow upper chest. And it may get deeper as well because you're taking these full big breaths. So you notice yourself breathing. And you can also notice this amongst your colleagues. I think it's very important as well, pay attention to other people's breathing, because you will know a person if they're getting stressed by virtue of the change of their breath. It's a very natural reaction. And if you know that your colleague who is presented with a difficult situation and their breathing is changing, you have to ask the question, is this good for your colleague? And personally, even if it was coming down to a job interview, and I used this example before, I remember interviewing people for a job going back 15 years ago. But on one occasion, I had two females that come in. The first one came in and she was sighing and she was upper chest breathing and faster breathing. And as I was talking to her, a lovely girl, but I couldn't help but acknowledge, if she's uncomfortable in this situation, she's going to be uncomfortable in the job. She's not up to it. And the next person came in was calm, collected, composed, because the person to give a difficult task to is the person who is able to control their states. And don't let your breathing give you away. And even if, for example, you had, say, in the police, for example, I was going to say the guards, we call them Garda Síochána, but the police, if you were interviewing a suspect, you will know by virtue of that person's breath, it will give you feedback of that person. And it's just watching. These are the simple human things that we all do, and we're doing it unconsciously anyway. But it's nice to bring it out to the surface. But when you understand your own breathing, you can change states. I totally agree with you. Modern technology, information technology, is training the brain to be absolutely distracted. And watch this space, Roger, because when the brain cannot stop thinking, and when we are drowning in thought, and that's what it is, we don't have the ability to bring any quietness or stillness to the mind. And it means then that we don't have the ability to direct our attention, and a quality of life suffers, because if we're drowning in thought, we are polluting our own internal environment, but we're polluting the environment of everything around us. But also, it doesn't take much to push us over the edge. And the breath is the one thing. And it's not about just holding our attention on the breathing, but it's changing our breathing to change states. So, for example, we use the BOLT score, the body oxygen level test. And to describe it is as follows: you take a normal breath in and out through the nose, and you pinch the nose and you hold the nose, and you time yourself in seconds until you feel the first definite desire to breathe. And then you let go and you breathe, but your breathing should be comfortable. So it's not the maximum length of a breath hold time. It's only the length of time of a comfortable breath hold time. Now, what does that say? One study by Professor Kyle Kiesel, he's a professor of physical therapy at, I think it's Evansville University in the United States. He looked at 51 individuals, and he concluded that if your breath hold time is above 25 seconds, there is an 89% chance that dysfunctional breathing is not present. Now, what does it mean if your breath hold time is less than 25 seconds? It means that you can have disproportionate breathlessness during physical exercise. It means that the lower your breath hold time, the more you're likely to be breathing faster and upper chest breathing. But your sleep can also be impacted, because if you breathe fast during sleep, your brain is interpreting that the body is under threat, and your brain will arouse you from deep sleep. And then you're waking up tired. So say, for example, people with asthma, people with anxiety or panic disorder, where it's more common to have that faster breathing pattern, that they can wake up at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're sitting there, they're lying there, they're not quite awake to get up, but they're not quite sleepy enough to fall back asleep. And then they're waking up feeling lethargic. And what about shift workers? Like, this is really where we need to be influencing breathing. And the elephant in the room when it comes to breathing, of course, is breathing in and out through the nose, not the mouth. Nobody should be waking up with a dry mouth in the morning. And any of the listeners, 50% of you will wake up with a dry mouth in the morning. And if you're waking up with a dry mouth in the morning, you're not as likely to wake up feeling refreshed. So the whole thing is light breathing, slow breathing, low breathing during your sleep. But how you breathe during sleep is influenced by how you breathe during the day. Change your breathing patterns during the day. This will influence your breathing during sleep, but also get the mouth closed during sleep. And it will help to improve your sleep quality and also for recovery. Because if you look at obstructive sleep apnea, it's just as inevitable as we get a bit older, we put on a bit of weight, that we put fat pads on the throat, the tongue gets fatter, we put fat in the belly. This impinges the movement of the diaphragm. The diaphragm breathing muscle is connected with the upper airway, the later muscles in the throat. Our upper airway, which consists of the space at the back of the nose, the space where the mouth meets the throat, and the throat itself is more liable to collapse. And first responders are going to be just, if not more, prone to sleep disorder breathing. Now, I have to ask this question. If one is prone to sleep disorder breathing, they're not going to cope with difficult situations as well as they should do, because we all know that when we have a decent night's sleep, we're really ready to go out and face the world. But when we have a lousy sleep, we don't take things in their stride, and we're definitely impacted by them, and we're more liable to make mistakes. Sleepy people are more liable to make mistakes, and sleep disorder breathing, which is so prevalent out there. So you can imagine now, you've got information technology, which is training the brain to be distracted. You've got high stress situations out there because there's a lot of instability, a lot of stress out there, as everybody knows. And now you throw sleep disorder breathing into the mix. But the one thing is, the breath can help to bring that. And it's almost a kind of the reality, or a check-in. You're just checking into your breath. Nobody needs to know you're doing it. You don't need robes and beads and all of the paraphernalia nonsense or anything like that. Even when we're working, say, with elite footballers, I use breathing to change their states. And I'm telling them, like, I need you to go out into this game. Go out with every cell of your body. I need them to be the archer. I need the footballer and the game to become one. Any situation we're going into, even if, for example, in my own situation, like, not now so much, but public speaking, and I would be going out to maybe 500 or 600 people, I will change my state before I go out. I will really slow down and relax and regain energy as well to recover. I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to bring my attention inwards. I'll spend about a half an hour really slowing down my breathing. Then I will do a few breath holds to stress my body and mind. And then I will walk out on stage with every cell of my body, so that I'm not just stuck on my head. Because the thing about the critical mind is that the critical mind can sabotage us. When we want to react instantly, the mind is too slow. We have to almost that we're reacting. We need to be able to, when we're in that state of flow, that everything is slowed down and that the right action happens by itself without conscious thought. And this is where training kicks in. However, we're more liable to make mistakes when we're stuck in our head because the critical mind is coming in. We need the brain to get out of the way, in terms of not the brain, but we need the mind to get out of the way. And for that, it's almost that memory is there in the mind and the body, and to allow that to direct us to where we want to bring it. So, just a couple of examples, but yeah, for me, and you spoke about as well, just focusing your attention on your breath, there is something nice because it helps to improve quality of life. And I often feel that as a society, we're going bipolar, that we've got highs that are so high and everybody is high fives and jumping and shouting. And when things go right, they're all, oh, brilliant. And then when the shit hits the fan, they're on the floor and they can't pick themselves up off the floor. So the highs are high and the lows are low. Whereas really what we want is we want a situation where the high is not so high, but the low is not so low. Because even we know when we have a high, it's only going to be short lived. It's for a brief period of time, but also to bear in mind that when we have a low, this too will pass. And life is just that little bit softer when you're connected with the breath, but also you're connected with time, because how many of us go through life? And once we are taught how to think, that we are so immersed in thinking, and how on earth can we experience what's going on around us if we spend our life stuck in our head? And I know when people, and I know it myself when I started off, like I'd go walk down from one street, one end of the street to the other. I wouldn't even see the street because my all of my attention was stuck in my head. And when you start taking your attention out of the mind and onto your breathing, at first you're thinking about your breathing. You're thinking there's your breath in and there's your breath out because you can't get out of your head. And that's fine. You may be thinking there's your breath in and there's your breath out. But with practice, what happens is that your attention then merges with the breath. Your attention merges with the present moment because any primary school kid, junior school child, some young child, they all know that we as human beings, we have five senses. We have sight, we have hearing, we have touch, we've got smell, we've got taste, and we communicate with life through our five senses and maybe a sixth sense, intuition. But if we are stuck in our head, we are devoid of communication with life because our attention is not in what we are doing, but our attention is immersed in thought. And present moment awareness is really when we are looking, but we're fully looking. We are listening, but we are fully listening. We are sitting and feeling, but we are fully sitting and feeling. And as I say to the footballers, I need you to go out there with every cell of your body and play that game with every cell of your body. Don't just be ahead. And this is about getting into flow states. But, talking about flow states, we need concentration. And the building blocks for concentration, coming back to Maslow's revised hierarchy of needs: deep sleep, functional breathing, breath aware, body aware, mind aware, self actualization.
That's it exactly. Friends, I can validate everything that Patrick has just said, either through my own direct experience or with working with clients. That bolt score he spoke of, where we want to try to get ourselves at about 25 or even higher for the gold standard, it's a game changer. And I've had students who have literally only been able to hold their breath for 3 to 4 seconds before they have to take their hand away. Their functional breathing is not happening. And when we are in these elevated states, we become more reactive to anger, fear, and sadness. Gee, I can't imagine why that would be a problem trying to navigate today's world. So everybody that I've taught has been able to get to that 20 to 25 range, and everything improves. Everything in their life improves. Their digestion improves. Their ability to stay awake in the middle of the day, to focus, to concentrate, to sleep better. There is no downside to anything that we're talking about here, and it is so worth your time. Let me give you a quick example of how I use this in performance as a police officer. So we are driving to calls, lights and siren are going, you're trying to navigate traffic, you're getting information over the radio. There are a bazillion stimulations coming in, and you're not even to the call yet. One of the things the very first thing I do is as soon as the call came in, I would begin breathing, and I would begin doing this light, slow, deep breathing. You're thinking, but wait, all this information is coming at you. Right, exactly. I want to take it all in. And I had trained, here's the key, friends. You got to be ahead of the curve and train it before the day happens. I trained it. I went right into it. I didn't have to even think about it. It's what I did in the performance of my duty. Now, here I am driving at 100 miles an hour, getting to the call, and now I'm at the call. Who do you think's coming out of the car? Somebody calm, centered, taking in the entire environment. I'm in flow state. I'm in the zone, and my life is on the line, literally. Now, if I didn't do that, who's that officer showing up at the call? He's coming out of the car reactive, panicking, not able to see anything, might miss completely the danger in front of them, could cost them their life or someone else in an extreme example. So if you need convincing, just look to the elite who have already been instituting this in a day-to-day narrative, right? Whether it's a footballer on the field or a Navy SEAL or a sniper, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, we're using this to tremendous advantage. But this translates into normal life. And I think this is an area, Patrick, where we sort of miss it. Well, those people are exceptional. They're different. You're missing the point completely, because if you could sit in your board meeting and stay calm, cool, centered, balanced, focused, and concentrating, do you think you're going to add to that? Do you think it's going to improve your career? How about your relationship with your partner? How about your relationship with your kids? Who do you want to be when you come through the door? Maybe on your commute home, you've been practicing light, slow, deep breathing. You walk through the door centered, balanced for whatever your personal life has in store for you. Friends, there's zero downside to everything that we have talked about. Patrick, I want to make sure people know how they can get a copy of this latest book. And friends, listen, if you want the Bible of breathing, check out The Oxygen Advantage and The Breathing Cure. But you want to get down and dirty with it, something that is easy to read, gives you the techniques. It's really an amazing piece of work. It's actually my favorite book that Patrick has produced, and it's the one I grab off my shelf most frequently when I want to remind myself of something. Patrick, how are they able to get this right now? What format do you have it in?
The Breathing Cure is in different formats. It's on Amazon. It's published by Humanics Books in the United States, and we publish in Europe ourselves. There's other publishers. And Atomic Focus then is available from our own websites. And one website is oxygenadvantage.com, and the other website is called buteycoclinic.com. So the books are there.
Outstanding. Friends, this is one that needs to be on your shelf. It's coming with my highest personal recommendation. And, Patrick, I want to just take a brief moment to also talk about a couple of the other things available on your website. And a couple of them have been a game changer. So I was waking up with a little bit of a dry mouth there for a minute, right? So I used some of your mouth tape to
Mm-hmm.
retrain myself. And actually, I was really thrilled because it only took 30 days. It only took
Mm-hmm.
30 days. And I was able to grow my goatee back, right? So I was mouth taping. And I don't do it anymore. But one of the other ones you actually developed for exercise, and it's this nasal dilator. And
Mm-hmm.
I now use it to sleep. And oh my God, I mean, my sleep. So I have an Aura ring and I track my sleep data. And I'm always in the, 80th percentile, that kind of thing. It's good. It's always in the good range. Since I put that darn nasal dilator in my nose at night, I'm in the mid to high 90th percentile consistently. I couldn't believe it. Do you mind just talking briefly about these two products? Because I know we're here for Atomic Focus, but I can't resist
Mm.
because these are just so good.
The myotape is a tape that surrounds the mouth. So as opposed to just wearing a tape right across the lips, I'll just even do a demonstration. So there's a packet here, and I'm going to take off one strip.
Now, don't get
And
shocked, everybody.
you,
You're
you,
about to see something you're going to go, oh no, trust me, it's really cool, works really easy.
you stretch it only about 30%. Don't overstretch it. And press it firmly. You have to press it a few times because the heat then will help it to stick. And it's the elasticity of the tape which is bringing the lips together. So it can help to ensure nasal breathing, but without actually covering the mouth. Now, the nasal dilator, so we initially developed this for children and teenagers. So it's a safe way of getting children to breathe through their nose, especially during wakefulness, and for older children then during sleep. The nasal dilator is based on what's called the Cottle maneuver. And if you put one finger here and one finger either side of your nostrils and just gently prise your nostrils, you'll feel that your airway opens up. So what that does is it helps to reduce resistance to breathing. If, for example, our airway gets narrow during sleep, so I have a compromised nasal airway, one nostril is smaller than the other, I have a deviated septum, I would need to help open up my own airway. So because anatomically I'm compromised. And by opening up the airway, it reduces the resistance to breathing. And as a result, then you're more likely to have more stable breathing during sleep. So you're less likely to be awoken from sleep. Because if we have resistance to breathing so that the airways are too narrow, but also because if our breathing is too hard and fast, because I suppose I often say to people, Roger, say somebody comes into me and they're saying, well, how could you help with snoring? And I say, well, make the sound of a snore through your mouth. And it goes like this. And they make the sound. And then I say, well, close your mouth and try and snore through your mouth with your mouth closed. And you can't. So they know then that when they get the mouth taped, that mouth snoring stops. And then I asked them, make the sound of a snore through your nose. And it goes like this. And they make the sound of a snore through their nose. And then I asked them to breathe through your nose, but breathe very lightly in. And a soft and slow, gentle breath out. And a very soft breath in. And a soft and slow and a gentle breath out. That when you slow down the speed of your breathing, you will find that it's more difficult to breathe through your nose. Sorry, when you slow down the speed of your breathing, you'll find that nasal snoring, it's more difficult. In other words, our snoring through the nose can significantly reduce when we improve our breathing patterns. But snoring through the nose is also influenced by the anatomy of the airway. So it's a combination of airway and flow of breathing. With breathing exercises during the day, we can help to improve our breathing during sleep and also for sleep apnea, because if the mouth is open, the tongue is not able to rest in the roof of the mouth. And if the tongue is not resting in the roof of the mouth, it's more likely to encroach the airway. And if we have a narrowing of the throat, the pipe is more liable to either partially collapse or fully collapse. And this will cause an apnea. It's an obstructive event. Now, the problem with an obstructive event is that then we get aroused from deep sleep. The person is waking up, they're feeling groggy, there's a pressure on their heart, it can drive up blood pressure, it can affect mental health, for example, but it can also affect other aspects. Productivity, concentration, focus, mood is going to be impacted. So I would say, in terms of sleep, breathing through the nose in and out is key, but also breathing light and breathing slow and breathing deep. And when we talk about a deep breath, we're just meaning that we're engaging the diaphragm because of the connection between greater recruitment of the diaphragm and the upper airway dilator muscles in the throat, which are helpful in keeping the airway open. So yeah, so those two products there, they were designed by myself with the purpose of helping to improve sleep.
And I'm telling you, everybody I've turned this on to has had a positive result. For me, it's been absolutely dramatic because, again, when I think of resilience, the two easiest ways to get there are improving sleep and improving breath. No question. And the two are absolutely related, friends. No question about it. So I highly recommend you get over to Patrick's website, the Oxygen Advantage, and you'll check out some of the products that are there. I've put them all to the test, love them all, personally would endorse them all. They're worth your time. And like you, I have one side that's a little more narrow, but I've also, before I got into martial arts, I was pretty darn good at blocking a punch with my face. And so I've broken my nose about 4 times, and that didn't help the situation any. So this has been a game changer for me. Patrick, as we kind of come to the close of the show, Atomic Focus, your latest work, everything that you've been doing, I just want to personally thank you. And I think it's really important to spread the word about what you're doing because you have offered a way for everyone to improve the aspects of their lives physically, mentally, spiritually. Everything comes into alignment when we're calm, centered, balanced, and moving through life with a lot more ease and grace. And that's what seems to be missing for a lot of folks. Friends, Patrick's work is amazing. And Patrick, I'm going to give you the last word on the show today. What's the final thing you would love to say to our audience?
I think, I suppose, Roger, the places to start. And if people were wondering, start off just paying attention to your breathing. If you're walking down the street, you have your mouth open. If you're waking up in the morning, is your mouth dry? Do you ever notice that when you do get into a difficult situation, that you're finding that your breathing is faster and shallow? Do you feel air hunger? Because all of these things can point that there's room for improvement of your breathing. Try your bolt, to measure the bolt score. And it is, also about, as you saying, from a spiritual point of view. And I know that word, what does it really mean? Well, there probably is many definitions of it, but for me, it would be our ability to bring a quietness and a stillness to the mind, because then we can connect with the life that's going on around us. And many people go through life and they haven't lived, because we cannot live life if we are stuck in our head. And I know that sounds a little bit new agey, but the benefits are immense, because if you are stuck in your head, you are not directing your attention to where you want to direct it upon. Any task that we are doing as human beings, there is something wonderful when we can reach our full potential. There's a great feeling to, at the end of a day, to say, well, that was a job well done, no matter what we do. And to do that job well, you have to have your attention on it. We don't have our attention on the task at hand if we're stuck in our head. So for everyday life, I think it's important. And they all come together anyway. It's not this as if one is in isolation to the other. The mind, our breathing and sleep, there's a directional relationship there.
Beautifully said. I could not add another thing to that. And I really resonate with this idea of helping us to achieve the grandest expression of our human potential. This is the way that you do it. Friends, getting mastery of the breath is worth your time, worth your energy. And I promise you, if you take the time to do this, you will notice profound change in your life. I have yet to have a single person tell me, oh, that training sucked. No, this is amazing work that Patrick's done. The Atomic Focus is a great book for everyone to get. I'm going to highly recommend it once again. I'll put some things in the show notes that you can have access to that, friends. And until next time, I hope that you all work toward building powerful resilience in your life and discover the Kensho way.